What is up, guys? I'm the Senator, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most underrated operators in Rainbow Six Siege, and this operator is Alibi. And so I'm going to go over with you why she is actually one of the best roamers in the game, why you should play her more, and new ways that I've never really seen on how you can roam with her. So I'm going to cut this intro really short, and we're just going to hop right into it, and we're going to talk about Alibi's kit. So in my experience, I can confidently say that Alibi's loadout is one of the most overlooked in the game. For the primary, you have the choice between the MX4 Storm or the AH-12. And for those of you who have never really played Alibi, the AH-12 is probably the only real downside of her and her kit. The AH-12 is an extremely weak shotgun, but does play a role if for whatever reason you need an entire wall taken out. And the AH-12 can do that with ease considering it is a 30-round drum mag. But since it's ridiculous for an operator to have that many shotgun shells, it only does 27 damage. But like I said, that's the only downside that I see with Alibi and her kit. But what makes Alibi one of the best options for roaming is her MX4 Storm. And if you've seen my video on the most underrated weapons in Rainbow Six Siege, you know that the MX4 Storm is one of my favorite SMGs in the game. When roaming, you need a weapon that is both accurate as well as having the ability to put a lot of bullets down range in a short amount of time. And the MX4 Storm is one of the best in the game at doing this, because when you're a roamer, you need a weapon that has a high fire rate. And as I mentioned in my video on how to roam with Vigil as a defender, you're automatically at a disadvantage when it comes to gunfights. Other than shield ops and knock, every attacker has the option to have an ACOG. And not only do they have ACOGs, but they have rifles that deal a ton of damage. And so, as a roamer, it's important that you try to end the gunfight before it even starts. And having the ability to throw 950 rounds per minute with a 30-round magazine is just absolutely ridiculous. And in most cases, it can give you advantage against an attacker who's running a high-powered rifle with an ACOG. So as we know, headshots are an insta-kill in the Siege. And so having a weapon that fires 950 rounds per minute with a 30-round magazine can pretty much guarantee that the average player is going to get a headshot. And so far, I've only spoken about the fire rate. But more important than the fire rate is how easy it is to control the weapon. And so if you can't control the weapon, then it doesn't really matter how fast it shoots. For instance, you can look at the SMG-12, which is the fastest shooting gun in the game, but nobody runs it because, or very few people run it because it's almost impossible to control that thing. The MX4 Storm is a laser beam and is so easy to control that you'd be an idiot to not run an angle grip on it. And the angle grip gives you yet another advantage when it comes to taking on gunfights. With an angle grip on a weapon that fires that fast, you'll be the first one to aim down sights, and that will give you the opportunity to end the gunfight before it even begins. And yet another amazing aspect of her kit that I've never heard anyone talk about, but it's there, is that she's the only 3-speed defender who has a shotgun as a secondary. And you could make the argument that Mozzie could be used as a roamer and he has the super shorty as a secondary, but Alibi's the only 3-speed defender with a shotgun secondary. And so having the combination of the shotgun secondary and impacts makes it to where she's so good when it comes to moving throughout the map. For instance, say you're running Alibi and you're in trouble, you can throw an impact at a wall, rotate through the wall, there's a hatch there, open up the hatch with your bailiff, drop, and you can flank the attacker before they even know what happened. And so this aspect of Alibi didn't even come to my mind until I started making this video, and I sat down and I studied her, and I found that Oryx is probably the only operator who's just as good, maybe even better, when it comes to moving around their map, just because he has the ability to go up through hatches. But other than that, Alibi is so good when it comes to being able to move. And that's a really important aspect of a roamer, being able to, move between floors and catch attackers by surprise. Okay, so I'm just now realizing that I've spent the past 4 minutes just talking about her kit, and we need to move on. So let's go into how her ability is useful. So I held off on buying Alibi for a really long time because I was never really that impressed with her ability. And I always assumed that most players would be able to tell the difference between a Prisma and Alibi. And I think I'm still correct. And so most players, especially in the higher ranks, will be able to tell the difference between Alibi and her Prisma. And so with this being the case, most people who play Alibi are actually using her incorrectly. What I see a lot of players do is just scatter the Prisma around the bomb site, hoping the attacker will get bamboozled into shooting it. And as I said, most attackers will be able to tell the difference between the Prisma and the Alibi. So what I recommend for Alibi is to use her Prisma in a similar way that you'd put up a frost mat. You need to put Alibi on windows. Now, many of you will be like, duh, Senator, but this is important because not very many people play Alibi and know how to use her. The trick with Alibi is to not just bamboozle people into shooting the decoy, but setting your decoy in places that will inconvenience the attackers. If you place a Prisma in front of a window, it does two things. One, it makes it extremely difficult for the attacker to play that window. Unless they're repelled, then they can find a way to, shoot the Prisma's feet. But there are many sites in Rainbow Six Siege that will actually really inconvenience the players if there's an alibi in the way. One specific example that pops into my mind is the dorm window on Outback. And this is one of the most popular windows that is played when the defenders are on laundry in games. And a lot of attackers will get kills on defenders who are playing in bathroom on this site. But by placing a Prisma in that window, it limits the amount of space that they can shoot at. Instead of using the entire window to play from, they can only use about a fourth of it, and that's the area that's above the Prisma's shoulder. The only way they can get rid of it is by having someone go in there and actually shoot it out, a Thatcher or a Twitch. And if you don't have any of those ops, this leads into the second thing the Prisma does, and that is prevent entry from windows. Now, some players can just hop in and shoot the Prisma's feet before being detected, but for many attackers, jumping through the window will automatically trigger the Prisma sensor. So not only does the Prisma block lines of sight, but can prevent window entry, as well as detect when someone's jumping through a window. So from a utility standpoint, the Prisma is an information tool that you don't have to actively use, and that can be really powerful if it's done correctly. You cannot always expect every defender to watch every window on site or into site, and that's where the Prisma can really come in handy. And it's like setting out a camera that feeds you information without you having to actively use it. And so with Alibi's Prismas, she's a roamer that actually brings some utility to the team, as opposed to maybe you could say Vigil, whose ability only benefits him and his roam, whereas Alibi can benefit everyone. But an aspect of Alibi and her utility that I've never really seen brought up is how you can actually use her utility actively on a roam. And so now I'm going to show you how you can actively roam with Alibi. And it's obvious that Jaeger is the best roamer in the game. He's a 3-speed with a fast-firing assault rifle, so he should always be your first choice for a roamer since his kit is amazing and overall usefulness, he's one of the most useful ops in the game. But since he's picked at a 9% rate, someone will probably pick him. And since you usually need 2 roamers, Alibi should be your second pick. So what makes her such a good roamer? Well, as I mentioned earlier, her kit makes it so easy for her to move throughout the map, and with that fast-firing weapon, it makes her so good on a roam. But other than her kit, her Prisma can actually be very, very useful for roamers. And so now I'm going to tell you how I roam with Alibi. And so at the beginning of the round, I put my Prismas on windows that are going to be active, and the windows that attackers are expected to try to push through. However, I only use 2 of my Prismas on the windows, and I keep 1 Prisma for myself to use on my roam. And to sort of explain to you how you can use a Prisma on a roam, I'm going to use Outback again as an example. And Outback is actually one of the best maps to use for Alibi because most defenders will play upstairs, and there's only one doorway that leads to upstairs. Every other entry into the upstairs part of Outback has to be through a window. And that's the reason why it's one of the most defender-sided maps in the game. So say you're defending games in laundry, and as a roamer, you want to stay in offices to keep an eye on garage, as well as defenders who try to push into games from bull. So imagine you're sitting in offices looking into bull, and you see a thermite come around the corner from the shark corridor. And you guys trade a few shots, and you know where each other are. And this is where your Prisma can really come in handy. So after you trade shots, and while he's reloading, you can throw a Prisma out between, the left side of the bull and the window. Then you can flank around through either party or electrical. And now, since the thermite saw you standing there before, he will most likely shoot the Prisma. But by the time he does that, you'll be coming out of electrical or party. You'll pop up on his left, and you'll catch him by surprise. And now, thanks to you and your Prisma, thermite can't get the wall open into games. I also use my Prisma for whenever I'm overwhelmed and I'm down to maybe 10 health and they're pushing me. I throw out a Prisma and then I leave. Since they know where I'm at, they may pre-fire it and hit my Prisma, and then everyone knows where they're at. So while the Prisma may not convince everyone, it can buy you some time. And so to sort of conclude this video, I say that you need to spend more time with Alibi. Other than Jaeger, she's probably the best roamer due to her utility that she can bring to the entire team, as well as how well she's able to move around the map through the use of hatches and the rotations with her impacts. And so if for whatever reason that wasn't able to convince you, spend time with her MX4 Storm. It is an SMG that most people are sleeping on, and it is so good, guys. So hopefully I was able to convince you to use her more. I would like to say thank you for sticking around to the end of the video, and if you would subscribe and hit the bell icon, I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know down in the comments what you think of Alibi. I love hearing from you guys. And if you ever need to get a hold of me, you can DM me on Instagram at ZSenator. Link is in the bio. Also, I have a Twitch. I'm live a couple times a week, so come check that out. And so that's about it. Please stay safe out there, guys. The corona's still going around. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So just, stay indoors. Watch my channel. That'll give you something to do. And so thanks for sticking around. As always, have a good one.